channel. If you are new here, hi, my name's Jasmine, and if you are not new here, welcome back, and I'm happy you decided to watch another video of mine. So for today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet. So I'm going to break up this video into 5 parts. I also have my notes down here on my desk, so I'm going to be looking down every once in a while. The very first part of the video will be all about tools, so crochet needles and other tools available for crocheting. The second will be about crochet vocabulary, such as what does the little numbers on yarn labels mean. The third will be the basics of crocheting, such as how to hold your needle. The fourth will be stitches. I will show you how to make 4 stitches, well, mainly 3. The fourth will be a slip stitch, and I'll explain to you what all of those are and how to do all of them. And then the fifth will be how to crochet a row, so how to turn your chain into a row. And then hopefully by the end of this video you will know how to crochet a row, and from that row, just by doing it over and over and over again until you get your desired height or length of your project, you can make so many different things, such as a scarf or a pot holder or a coaster, or you can even stitch the sides of your rectangle or square together and make a tube to make things like a headband or some leg warmers. So just by learning how to crochet a row, you can make so many different things. So then hopefully by the time Christmas comes around within the next few weeks, you can make so many different projects for your friends and family. And if you're watching this video when it's not the holiday time, you can still learn how to crochet. So hopefully by the end of this video you will know how to crochet. However, I can't guarantee that you will learn how to crochet within one day, because everybody's learning curve is different. One of the hardest things, at least for me, one of the hardest things was learning how to hold my hook and also how to hold my working yarn. So for some people that may take a while. One of the things I do want to say though is don't get discouraged. Learning how to crochet is a task, and it can be a hard thing to learn, and to eventually get to the point where you just naturally grab the yarn and the hook to begin working your project will take some time. It definitely took me a while to get to this point. It took me years, actually, but it only took me years because I didn't ask for help, nor did I actively seek for help. So if you remain consistent and you practice, then you will learn how to crochet very quickly. So let's just get started now. These are some of the tools that you'll need. Yarn, needles, scissors. Tapestry needles are not required, but you definitely can use them. Tape measure and stitch markers. Stitch markers are just very helpful if you get confused, especially when you're using white or black yarn, or when you need to count certain stitches away from each other. You just mark your place with a stitch marker. You just clip them on like this. There are many different kinds of stitch markers. Not all of them look just like this. There are some that have little charms on them. Some of them have numbers. So I would say definitely look online, look in your local craft store, and you'll find so many of these tools. In terms of brands, there are so many different brands available, but the types of hooks that I personally like to buy are the Boye, if I'm saying that right. It's B-O-Y-E. They are all metal. There are also wooden crochet hooks available and plastic, but I personally do not like to use plastic hooks. I prefer metal, and I have never worked with wood hooks, but I would imagine that they are also very nice. Okay, so now let's go into crochet vocabulary. Let's begin with different needle sizes. Let me show you something that is on crochet needles. Each crochet needle has a letter and a number on it. Well, let me rephrase. Most of the time, they'll have a letter on it. This one that I own only says H, and then it was 29 cents. It doesn't include a number and a letter or the size in millimeters. So look for ones that do. This label is very helpful when you are looking for yarn, and let me show you why. On this yarn, It includes a gauge box. That's what these boxes are. They're gauges. I personally never make myself a gauge, but they are extremely helpful. And you probably should do them, but I just never do, personally. So for this yarn, you need a US I9 hook or a 5.5 millimeter hook. So this one is an I9 5.5 millimeter hook. So that means this hook will go very well with this yarn. Another thing to know is that not all letters and numbers on a hook mean that they are the same size. So here I have two G6 size needles, but they are two different sizes millimeter wise. This needle is a US G6 hook, but it's 4 millimeters, and this gold one is US G6, but it's 4.25 millimeters. So that means this gold hook is bigger than this silver hook, just by 0.25 millimeters. When you are crocheting things for babies, for example, you may want to use the smaller size hook compared to the larger size hook, just so that way the yarn is more tightly woven together. One more thing about a yarn label is that yarn labels include these numbers. This number is talking about the thickness of the yarn. So this is a size 3 thickness yarn, and this is a size 4 thickness yarn. When you are looking at Bernat baby blanket yarn, it'll probably say a size 6 or size 5. Now let's discuss some other vocabulary used in crocheting. The first being your working yarn. So this yarn attached to the ball of yarn is called your working yarn. This is the yarn that you will be constantly grabbing to work up your project. The tail in crochet is this little piece of yarn that is made when you first start your beginning chain. And I will show you how to make a chain, and we will discuss again what a tail is. A chain is this braided rope looking thing, and I'm showing you a chain when it's attached to a project already, because a chain isn't just the beginning of a project. It is also something you make to make lace, for example, like this. This space here is a series of chains. This is a series of chains. And this, yarning over once and pulling through, is a chain. At the bottom of my project, I began this project with a chain. This whole bottom piece down here is my foundation chain. And I will show you how to make a chain in a little bit. Yarning over is the motion of wrapping your working yarn over your needle. Pulling through is pulling the working yarn you just wrapped over your needle, and I pull it through this loop that was already on my hook. So that is just what pulling through means. You just pull the yarn that you yarned over with through the loop that's already on your hook, or loops that are on your hook. And now let me talk to you about tension. Tension is one of the most important things when it comes to crocheting. Tension is what will cause your project to be super tight, super loose, or all wavy and wonky. I don't think I have any examples to show you because all of the earliest things I've ever crocheted are no longer with me. But let me show you what I mean by tension. So by holding the working yarn in my other hand, I control the tension of the loop that is on my hook, which also means that I control how loose I make my next stitch. So let me show you with very loose tension. Look how loose this stitch is. And now with super tight tension, I can make this stitch very tight, which is something you don't want to do. You don't want to have super loose tension like this, but you also don't want to have super tight tension. When your tension is too tight, you will end up creating very little space for your hook to go back through any loops that you made, especially in your chain. Whereas if you make your tension very loose, you will have very large spaces. It is very common to want to create super tight tension, and it is very easy to create super loose tension. Something that will take some time is figuring out the right amount of tension you create with your fingers working together. You want to make sure that you are creating a good amount of tension between the loop on your hook and the working yarn. You don't want it too tight and you don't want it too loose. You want it just right. A stitch is this piece right here. This little piece right here is one stitch. This is actually a double crochet stitch. And this is the little stitch space that was created by that stitch. This V-shaped space is where you will be inserting your hook when you are making projects. You can also insert into the back loop only or the front loop only, depending on what your project calls for. But I can definitely go over things like that in another video. Now let me show you what turning your work means. So as I'm coming to the end of a row, I'm getting ready to turn my work. Typically, you will end up chaining some amount of chains, and then you will turn your work over just like that. So I was working from right to left, then I ended my row, then I chained one, and then I literally just flipped the work over. And that means I'm working from right to left again. Now let me show you how to hold the hook. Some people will hold the hook with their hand on top of the hook, whereas others crochet with their hand under the hook. It just depends on what is more comfortable for you. I personally hold with my hand over the hook. Now I'm going to show you how I hold the hook. This is by no means the proper way to hold the hook. This just is what I find most comfortable for me. I use my middle finger and my thumb to squeeze this flat part of the hook, so I pinch them, and then I use my index finger to control any loops that will be on my hook, and then I wrap the rest of my fingers around the hook. You are definitely welcome to hold the hook the same way I do. I'm not sure how many people out there hold it like this. I have definitely seen people hold the hook like this and crochet. Some people will tell you to hold it like a pencil. That is how my grandma told me to hold the hook, but I hold the pencil like this. It's very awkward, and I grip the life out of my pencils. So holding a hook that way was very uncomfortable for me, and I definitely could not figure out how to crochet and make my hands work together that way. If you hold a pencil like this, then you can probably get away with holding the hook like this. But if you write like this, or like I do, you may have to find a modified version of holding a pencil to transition to holding a hook. I will say that pinching where the flat part of the hook is will definitely be helpful when first learning how to hold the hook. You just have to figure out what works for you. Now let me show you how to hold the working yarn. Just like what's comfortable for you holding the hook, holding the working yarn also depends on comfortability. But a very common thing would be to at least wrap the yarn around one of your fingers and then bring the yarn over one of your other fingers. This is how I hold the working yarn, and you are again more than welcome to do it the same way I do. Wrap my pinky around the yarn and then bring my index finger under the yarn. Some people may wrap around 2 fingers and then go over. Others may possibly only hold the yarn like this. You just have to find what is most comfortable for you. Now let's do our beginning slip stitch. I do it with a hook, so I will show you how I do it with my hook. But let me show you first how to do it with your hands. You make a bunny ear. You then put your fingers through the bunny ear you created, and then you grab the working yarn. Here's our working yarn. You grab the working yarn and you pull it through your loop or your bunny ear that you made. And then you make this sliding knot. And that is the beginning slip knot that you will make. That's what it's called, a slip knot. That is your beginning slip knot. Let me show you how I do it using a hook. So I take my yarn and I place it over my hook, just like that. I take my working yarn and I put it under my tail. This little piece where the yarn ends is what a tail is. I place my working yarn under the tail, so crossing it under, hold it down and yarn over, and then pull through this loop that I made. And then I pull. And then I pull it a little bit tighter to have a little bit more better of a tension. Then I can begin my chain. Now let's make a chain. So holding your working yarn, holding your needle, then you're going to use your thumb and your middle finger to hold your tail, or use whatever fingers you feel more comfortable holding the tail with. Hold the tail down, yarn over, pull through the loop that is on your hook, and then you made a chain. Let's do it again. Hold your tail, yarn over, pull through the loop on your hook, and there's a chain. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And it's just this motion over and over again that will then create a chain. See? And you can already see here something about tension. My tension was too loose here, so it made a chain stitch that is very loose compared to the rest of my chain. Now let's move on to stitches. I'm going to show you 4 different stitches: a single crochet, a double crochet, a half double crochet, and then a slip stitch. Let's start with a single crochet. By inserting my hook into the next stitch, I yarn over, pull through 1 loop. Now I have 2 on my hook. I then yarn over again and pull through 2 loops on my hook, and that is a single crochet. Just like that. Now let me show you a double crochet. A double crochet involves yarning over 1 time before you insert your hook into the next stitch. So yarn over once, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over again, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and that's a double crochet. Let's do it again. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through. Now you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now let's do a half double crochet. Half double crochet also involves yarning over once before you insert your hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through. Now you have 3 loops on your hook again. And this time, instead of yarning over and pulling through 2 loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that is a half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook through the loop, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So here we have our single crochets. Here we have our double crochets. And here we have our half double crochets. Here's what the other side looks like. Half double crochets, double crochets, single crochets. And when you are unraveling your work, you can tell if it's a half double crochet, or single crochet by looking at how many loops there are around your working yarn. So here there are 2 loops around my working yarn. If I were to unravel it, I see 3, so that means I made a half double crochet. See? 3 loops, 3 loops, and 3 loops. Here I see 2 loops wrapped around my working yarn, but I also see 2 more little pieces of string down here too. So if I were to pull it apart, I see 2 loops, then I pull it one more time, and I see 2 more loops. That means it's a double crochet. 2 loops and 2 more loops. 2 loops and 2 more loops. And then here is my single crochet. There are only 2 loops wrapped around my working yarn. If I pull it apart, there's only those 2 loops, or 1 loop, because this is one of the loops created by a stitch. Now let me show you a slip stitch. A slip stitch is inserting your hook through the loop, yarning over once, pulling through, and then using this yarn that you just pulled through the loop to pull through one more time through the loop that's also on your hook. So let's do it again. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, and pull through one more time. And that's a slip stitch. It's a very tiny stitch, and it's very commonly used when you are working in the round. So now that we have seen some stitches, let me show you how to turn this chain into a row. Once you decide how long you want your chain, you can then begin making a row. So let's say I want my chain to be this size. I just unravel till I get to the point for how wide I want my project. And if you want your project to be longer, you just build up more chains and it'll get longer. So let's start a row. If you are doing a single crochet, you insert your hook into the second chain from the hook. So here, where you see the working yarn moving through the loop, right here, that is the first chain from the hook. Here's the hook, here's a chain. Here is the second chain from the hook. Insert your needle into the second chain from the hook and begin your stitch. I did a single crochet, so I inserted my hook, yarned over, pulled through, and pull through 2. For a double crochet, it is most common to insert your hook into the third chain from the hook. So that means not this chain right here where my yarn is moving through, and not the second one, but the third right here. So 1, 2, 3. And that is for a double crochet. That is one of the most common things to do when you're starting your row with a double crochet, is to insert your hook into the third chain from the hook. If you're reading a pattern, it will most likely tell you which chain to insert your hook into. For a half double crochet, you can just insert your hook into the second chain from the hook. So when you're reading a pattern that says insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, that means not this one where the yarn is moving through, but the next one. Or if it's saying the third, the next one. And it's the same thing. If your pattern says to insert your hook into the sixth chain from the hook, that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you just insert your needle into the sixth chain. So now let's make a row. Let's make a row of single crochets. Insert my hook into the second chain from the hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And then continue that all the way across your chain. And when you're working in your chain, you want to work into the top loop. So you see there's these little V's, right? You don't really want to work on the bottom loop, you want to work on the top loop. There are projects and patterns where you work into the bottom loop, but for right now, we're just going to be making a row and building up this way. So you just single crochet all the way across, or if you're doing double crochets or half double crochets, just do that all the way across. And then once you get to your last chain, do one more stitch, and then depending on the stitch that you did, if you did single crochets, chain 1. If you did double crochets, chain 2, and then turn, and then you repeat the same thing going across. So because I did single crochets, I need to get rid of one chain. And then you continue building up your single crochets or double crochets or half double crochets or whatever stitch you chose. Working back to make another row, you now see these little V's. Before we only saw one loop. You want to work your needle into both loops. Unless your pattern calls for it, you don't insert your needle into the V. So if you were to look at your work this way instead of a top view looking at the V's, you will notice these little holes right here. And that is where you will insert your hook. And so I am inserting my hook into those holes, which means that both loops of the V are on my hook. And then I continue my stitch. And then you just continue that all the way across until the end of your row. And as you're working up your row, however many chains you created, minus 1 will be how many stitches you should continually have. Because if you remember, when you start your work, you insert your needle into the second chain from the hook. So that means you're losing one chain. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. I started out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus one more, 10 chains. And I lost one chain because you insert your hook into the second chain from the hook. So then you end up with one less stitch. So if you are building up your work and you notice you are increasing in chains, that means you are probably inserting your hook twice into the same stitch, or you are inserting your hook somewhere at the end of your row, which is very common. I used to do that too. And then it would make my work come out a little wonky because I was inserting my hook an extra time. So once you finish your row, you put it into the last V, finish your stitch, and then whatever little V is down here, you don't crochet into. Once you have the same number of stitches that you've made in your first row, and you have it in your next row, and the next, and the next, and the next, if those numbers remain the same, you are doing it right. Unless your pattern calls for increasing or decreasing, which is something that I can also explain in another video, then that is when you will have different number of starting stitches to the number of stitches that are in the row you are working on. And that is how you make a row. Now let me show you how to finish your work. So once you get to the desired length of your project, you finish off by chaining 1 if you did a single crochet, or chaining 2 if you did a double crochet. And then you pull the yarn so you have a nice loose loop, and then take your hook off of the yarn, grab your scissors, and cut however long you want your tail. And then with this loop, you don't want to pull where you cut your yarn. Instead, you want to pull the loop so that the end of the yarn gets pulled through the last chain you made. And then you tighten, and you're done. So I hope this video was helpful in helping you learn how to crochet. I'm sorry if the lighting was changing a little too much as I was filming. The sun started going down as I was filming. Now that daylight savings time has happened, it's starting to get darker earlier. Hopefully this video helped you in learning how to crochet. If there are some things that I need to explain a little bit better, please let me know in the comments. If there are some things that you want a more in-depth video on, I can definitely do that. If this was helpful, also, there's some yarn fuzzies floating around. If this video was helpful, also please let me know. I haven't really explained how to crochet to anyone really before, so hopefully I did a good job in explaining. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you will learn how to crochet from this video. Let me know if you end up making something, and I would love to know what it is that you made. Bye!